From a highly secure network of top secret locations across North America, this is the Spurs Insider NBA Cup Edition. I am Mike Finger, joined as always by Express News Spurs beat writer Jeff McDonald, who's been on the road a long time. Not as long as the Spurs have been. The local Cagers are about to head to their ninth different North American city in 18 days. It's been quite a trip so far, and it's about to hit its peak. After 6 years in the wilderness, the Spurs are about to play a playoff game, Jeff. It's the NBA Cup, yes. It's not the official NBA postseason, no. But it's a playoff game on Wednesday against the Los Angeles Lakers. Win or go home. Are you ready?
Settle down. Just settle
Say it.
down. Just settle down.
Don't
NBA.
rain on people's parade. It's a playoff game.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. You're right. I mean, they're playing for stakes. That's something. That's something. But uh it's going to be something.
I tried to start this podcast on such a high note, and then you just immediately brought us down.
I've been on the road too long, man, be effervescent this morning. I'm sorry.
How long? How are? I'm not going to ask how you're holding up, but we're recording this the morning after the Spurs held on for a riveting victory at the Smoothie King Center in New Orleans, Louisiana. A game that started as a rout, turned into a nail biter, and concluded with the rookie Dylan Harper outshining another rookie, Derek Queen. That didn't do anything for your effervescence?
No, it didn't. But one thing I will say about your local Cagers, and this is probably a sign of how far they've come, back when they were winning 22 games a year, you just take the wins where you can get them and however you can get them and however ugly they look and however they come, you just say, hey, a win's a win. I don't think they were very satisfied with that win over New Orleans last night. I think New Orleans is 3-23, and they don't have Zion Williamson, and the Spurs were ahead by 25 points, head by 20 at halftime, and the Spurs were really celebrating that one. Like I watched them come off the floor through that tunnel towards the locker room at the Smoothie King Center after the game. Not one smile, not one single player, coach, staff member had a smile on their face. Now they loosened up later. Keldon got the music going in the locker room to where you can't even do interviews because it's so loud. But they were not satisfied with that win, and I think that's a sign of this team expects more of itself now, and I think that's a good thing.
One thing that outsiders might not have expected of this team, even if the Spurs expected it, was when one Victor Wembanyama was declared to be out with an injury for at least 2 weeks, if not more. I believe that was, are we at 11 games ago, 10 games ago? I don't think
11,
anybody thought how many?
11 now. I think they're 8-3.
11. I don't think anybody predicted that they would go 8-3 without Victor Wembanyama, but that's what the Spurs have done. Stephon Castle returned to action last night. He missed a lot of that. But in terms of expectations and exceeding them, that I think is unquestionably an example of doing more than people thought you would do. Some of the games, I know people are upset about letting one slip away against the Suns, letting one slip away against Minnesota. That a third quarter that Jeff will talk about a little bit, kind of getting out of control at Cleveland. But big picture wise, looking back at 11 games without the big fella and going 8-3, including a stretch of, like I mentioned earlier, 9 different cities in 18 days, all that put together to be where the Spurs are right now, heading into this NBA Cup playoff game in Los Angeles. Pretty good.
Yeah, they've done a good job of holding the fort, and you're right. I did not see that coming. I thought when Victor went out and then Steph went out the very next game back in November, I thought that, well, that's going to be tough. Like I mean, not that it was going to sink their season necessarily, because it is a long season, but I was like, if they don't get where they're wanting to go this year, it's probably going to be this next stretch where they just don't have the bodies to beat some teams. And lo and behold, they did. And like you mentioned, the ones they quote unquote let slip away, but there are ones like that game in Orlando that again, I think I went on the podcast the week before, a couple days before that game in Orlando, back to back, coming from San Antonio, going east, and said that game is unwinnable. There is no way the local Cagers are going to go to Orlando, which is a pretty good team, on the second night of a back to back with all the travel they've been doing. Like, they're going to be worn out. They're going to get smashed by the Magic. They did not. They went to Orlando and won the game. So they've won some games that I don't think anybody really expected them to win. And if I think the players are one thing. They have, NBA players have irrational confidence, but people around the team, I don't think they thought they were going to win that Orlando game too, just because it was set up schedule-wise to lose. So when they went into Cleveland like 2 nights later and laid that third quarter egg, it was sort of like, that's where it all, like all the travel, all the lack of bodies, all the tiredness, that's kind of where you saw it come to bear. And they're still not out.
Yeah, when you're starting Bismack Biyombo against Evan Mobley, like that's you're usually not expecting to win that game.
Yeah, because that was the other thing. It wasn't just in Cleveland, it wasn't just Victor's out and Steph is out. It's also Luke Cornett is out. And you have no 7-footers. And that was the first game where the Spurs have played without Victor before this year, and they played without Luke before this year, but they have not played without them both at the same time. They haven't had them both out, and it was just a rim parade, man. 80 paint points for the Cavs. Like, there's just no winning a game that way. So,
and Steph Castle didn't play in that game either. I mean, all these games individually, you as someone who follows the team, you think, oh, maybe they can win that game, whatever. But going into the season, if you would say they're going to go to Cleveland, a team that was one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference last year, without Victor Wembanyama and without Luke Cornett and without Steph Castle, who's arguably your best defender, for sure your best perimeter defender, that was not a game you should expect to win. Anyway.
And fans don't like to hear quote unquote excuses or whatever. They don't care who's out or what the schedule's like. But this schedule has been no joke lately. I mean, this has been like a rodeo trip. It's worse than the rodeo trip as far as
worse than what the rodeo trip is now.
Yeah, correct. And coming back, I mean, they did play the one home game, but they were here for one game against Memphis, won that game. But it's like, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's like in the span of a month from mid-November to mid-December, if they're fortunate enough to go all the way to the end of the NBA Cup, they'll have been home for a grand total of 36 hours around that Memphis game. It's been a flight or a game in a different city every day, and it doesn't end. Like they've survived that game last night in New Orleans and got on a plane to LA and got in about it'd be 2 p.m. Pacific or 2 a.m. Pacific. That's 4 a.m. where they left from, like where your body clock is. And then they're gonna, I suppose everyone's still asleep over there in LA. And then you just take today off, and then you're gonna get up and play the freaking Lakers on Wednesday. And I'll tell you what, that game seems like it's gonna be unwinnable.
You're going for 3.
It's gonna
Jeff McDonald going for the hat trick. The Nuggets game was unwinnable. The Magic game was unwinnable, and now the Lakers game. I
just don't see it. And we can talk about who might or might not play in that game soon. I think that's what the listeners want to know about. But just the travel is adding up. It is adding up, and there's no you can say, well, they're NBA players, they make millions of dollars. Suck it. Just they fly on. They don't fly coach. You can say all those things, but like teams don't play their best basketball in these sort of circumstances. And I was talking about it with a couple people around the team, and like, we love the NBA Cup. It's fun. It's a fun thing to do in the middle of the season. Gives you something to play for, makes it a little more exciting, but it does create some weirdness around the schedule. And that's part of the reason this trip is so long. Like this, I haven't looked this up, but probably it's true. Got to be the only road trip in NBA history that includes and Los Angeles on it. Like it's just
I bet that's happened before.
I don't know. They don't generally don't do that, and it's all because of the NBA Cup, and it screws up your home game. Like now you might have to push the Washington game back. That's at home if you go very far. Like it just creates a lot of logistical nightmares for teams, and so it's not going anywhere. And all in all, nobody's complaining about it when you have $500,000 on the line. But is it 500,000? Yeah, $500,000
Half a million per player.
per player on the line. Like the people will do that for
A
half.
$250,000 per two-way player.
So,
That was in the only home game of this stretch. That was a big topic of conversation in the locker room after a game. Riley Minnick's pointing out that he gets 250K if the Spurs go all the way.
yeah,
David
those guys,
Garcia.
the Riley Minnickses of the world were in Austin last year while the Spurs were kind of, they didn't make the quarterfinals, but I guess they had a winner you're out game in the group play, and they were all talking about how they watched it in Austin together, and we're all cheering and
It's nothing to sneeze at.
Anyway,
Well, while we were discussing your potential to be wrong a third consecutive time on the unwinnable games, I do feel, in the interest of the listeners, to point out that you've had a pretty good track record, Jeff McDonald, so far this season in making sort of public, quote unquote, guesses about the Spurs injury situation. I remember you making a quote unquote guess about the return of De'Aaron Fox a week or more in advance and guessing that he might open at home in a game against the Pelicans, I think it was on a Saturday night. And that was exactly what happened. I think you sort of guessed the return of Dylan Harper, and that's what happened. And a while back, much to the consternation of the NBA fans at large, Spurs fans nationwide, you had pointed out that Victor Wembanyama probably wasn't going to return in early December, the first week of December, the first day that he was going to be eligible. You guessed it would be at some point between the Lakers NBA Cup quarterfinal game and Christmas. And with one game to go, you still have a chance to be correct there. And this is the transition into will he or will he not play against the Lakers? But I just want the listeners to appreciate that when Jeff McDonald makes a quote unquote guess about the Spurs injury situation, he generally kind of knows what he's talking about.
I see what you're getting at. I see what you're asking about. I know it's what everybody listening to this podcast wants to know. But I really don't think that Jordan McLaughlin is playing in LA.
Yeah.
I think he's still going to be out.
No, but I do think it's I mean you're around the team. The Express News is at all these games. It's not like we're just throwing stuff against the wall. You've tried to explain to people. You've tried to give people timelines, and I just thought for all the grief that I give you on this podcast over the years, it's kind of a tip of the hat to say that I think you generally lead the listeners in your own cantankerous, sometimes obnoxious way in the right direction. So
I appreciate that. I think that's the compliment. Anyway, well, let's get into it. I still don't think Victor's playing in LA, but he's on the trip.
Everything I just said, it could throw it out the window if the Spurs put out their injury report on Tuesday afternoon and say Victor Wembanyama available, which they won't. But that's the risk. You're taking a risk.
Yeah, I don't think he's playing in LA, but he is on the trip. He and Steph and McLaughlin joined the trip mid-progress. There was an extra off day here in New Orleans. The Spurs held a practice, and those three showed up. It was kind of built up as a surprise to the other guys. Like they walked in the gym because they weren't traveling with the team at that point. They walked into the gym at Tulane, and it was a big celebratory moment that those guys were here. Victor did practice, like he's on the floor practicing. He went through shoot around yesterday. After shoot around, after we had done our little interviews with Steph Castle, who was cleared at shoot around to play against the Pelicans, we were told, Vic was lacing up his shoes, like he's about to do something. And we were told, snap your pictures and get out, basically. Like, you don't get to watch this. But he played a little 2-on-2 behind closed doors. We did not get to witness it. And we asked Mitch if he's on the flight to LA, and Mitch said he better be. Basically, is a direct quote. Like, I'm assuming he's going to be, he better be. I don't know that all adds up to him playing. I do have a question of, like, if you're completely sure he's not playing in LA, why even take him there? So that if you're looking for any kind of glass half full indication, he's there. So he's not ruled out. But I just think they're wanting to give him one more game at least. And the issue is, or not the issue, but the reason is the schedule. You win that game in LA, you get 3 games off till you have to play in Vegas. You lose, you get 5 days off until you play a home game on the following Monday. And if you're the Spurs medical people, you're going, man, we could give him 3 to 5 more days to ramp up. And that's just way too tantalizing for a medical team. They don't care about the NBA Cup. I don't know how the money works. Does the medical team get money for the Cup? I don't know. I apologize. I don't know the answer to that. But their job is just to say when's the best time for him to come back. And I don't think they're gonna want to play him one game and then he sits around for 3 days or sits around for 5 days. When they play him, they want to play him and get it going. So
what you mentioned earlier about him going 2-on-2 yesterday, that's not the last step typically on these long layoffs.
It goes 1-on-1,
De'Aaron Fox,
3-on-3.
You think back to Dellin Harper. There's the ramp up from 2-on-2 to the eventually the 5-on-5, and the 5-on-5 happens before. The 5-on-5 in practice happens before the 5-on-5 in the games. And maybe Victor will skip it. Again, he's on the trip, like you said. That means that, and Mitch Johnson has not completely ruled him out. But this is knowing the Spurs, knowing how they usually handle these things, knowing what Jeff just explained about the schedule, the advantages of sitting one extra game. Then you have between 3 and 5 days to ramp up to more 5-on-5 action in practice. And this isn't just a situation where he's been out a week and needs to ramp up. He's been out 3 weeks and needs to ramp up. So I would tend to agree with Jeff again on his expectation for this. I will say though, when you put Victor Wembanyama on that plane to a game where the entire country, nay, the world will be watching, I know he's going to be doing some campaigning. And that's kind of the situation you're setting up there. When you bring Victor with you to Los Angeles, you're going to have your franchise player really pushing to play. And I don't know, maybe he'll win an argument there. Or maybe he'll see the big picture too.
There's going to be 3 voices in that conversation, 3 main voices, and it's going to be Victor who absolutely wants to play and probably thinks he can. There's going to be the league who definitely wants Victor Wembanyama in the NBA Cup game. Like, they're the ones that care about the NBA Cup the absolute most. And I'm not going to say they're already leaning on the Spurs. I think that's probably too strong, but they are asking questions. The league office is already asking, like, is Vic going to be there? Is he going to play? We need to know. They have a vested interest. And then there's the Spurs medical staff whose vested interest is making sure nothing bad happens to him. And I don't know, man, you don't want to be the doctor who signs off on Victor Wembanyama playing in Los Angeles, and God forbid something horrible happens to him. Everybody's asking, look, he could have 5 more days, and you signed off. What are you doing? Like, those guys, we know doctors. Everyone here, well, I'm not going to say everybody, but most of us have been to a doctor before. And they're always going to err on the side of absolute caution. And if there's a 5% risk of something, they're going to be a little bit cautious about it. And so at some point, all those factors are going to converge. All three of those voices are going to converge, and you're going to come to a compromise at some point. But I don't know if it's Wednesday. We'll see.
I would
I think as this goes along, I mean, the fact that he's practicing, he's on the floor. If you get past Wednesday, he doesn't play. He might be in play for those games in Vegas if they win. He might be in play if they lose. He might be in play for that home game that they're going to schedule on Monday at home. That becomes a different kind of question because it could be against Oklahoma City. And do you really want your first game back to be against those monsters? Maybe not. But he is getting closer. And I know people are like hate that because he's been getting closer for 3 weeks. But I mean, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel now. I'll put it that way.
I would add a fourth voice, or at least expand one of those voices. This is sort of a subtle observation here, but it's not just Spurs doctors in a vacuum without. I mean, the Spurs organization has a voice in this too, in terms of they're telling the doctors, hey, we have the big picture in mind. I think in some organizations, the franchise might be more inclined to say, hey, doctors, what can we do to get this guy back as soon as possible? I think the Spurs have been doing this a long time. I mean, I think way back to the year 2000 when Tim Duncan was trying to get back for a playoff series the year after the title when his knee was sore. And the Spurs made the decision in conjunction with their medical staff that, no, we don't need to push him in this first round playoff series, which the Spurs lost. And I think that's been a constant through the years is, yes, the medical staff is making medical decisions, but they also understand that they're not getting that pressure to get guys back as soon as possible, if that makes any sense.
You know who has
this is something that's worked really well, by the way, not only in the big picture, an organization that's won 5 championships and been a contender for a long time and has made it through Tim Duncan issues and Manu Ginobili issues and Tony Parker issues. But also this year, I mean, for all the belly aching about how the Spurs just aren't rushing these guys back and they're sitting Steph Castle too long and they're sitting Dylan Harper too long and they're sitting Victor Wembanyama too long. This team that has missed the playoffs 6 consecutive years is in the 5th seed in the Western Conference. They've won 8 of their last 11 games. Like, it's hard to argue with this and say that this handling of this is way too conservative when it's working out pretty dang well.
And one thing some fans might not understand, maybe I should clarify this. The one person who has zero say on when Victor Wembanyama comes back is Mitch Johnson, the head coach. And that's true of 30 NBA franchises. The head coach has zero say. He's sitting around like the rest of us waiting for them to come to him and say, okay, you can play Victor now. And I guarantee when that happens, Mitch Johnson will put him on the floor. He's not going to say, no, Victor's not playing. But he has no say over it at all. And somewhere along the line, since I've been covering the NBA, that has changed.
Yeah.
You kind of notice that.
And another change there is Greg Popovich last year would have told you the same thing. I just play guys whenever I'm told they can play. I think he was sort of underselling himself then because he was president of basketball operations, and he was one of the he was sort of part of the front, not necessarily the front office, but he made big picture organizational decisions. And so, yes, like you're saying, 20 years ago, it was more up to Pop because that's just how organizations worked and how the NBA worked. Now the medical staffs have more autonomy, but also this is an organizational decision. And it's an organizational decision that's heavily influenced by what the medical team is saying. It's not up to one head coach. And I think that's important to note. So, and again, how could you argue with it, considering where the Spurs are right now, considering how they made it through sitting out their highest paid player, De'Aaron Fox, for the first part of the season? sitting the reigning rookie of the year, Stephon Castle, for a couple of weeks, sitting the number 2 pick in the NBA draft, Dylan Harper, for a couple of weeks. Now sitting out the franchise player Victor Wembanyama. They're still way ahead of where we thought they'd be after what 23 games. So
yeah, the fun part of the whole saga is on social media, where you'll get guys or people, I don't know if they're all guys, who have no medical
people.
Yeah, that's a good point. Have no medical degree, have never met Victor Wembanyama, sure haven't seen his MRI results, have not seen him work out, has not seen any of his rehab process, and they'll get on social media and say the Spurs are dumb, their doctors are idiots. Why are they being so overly cautious with this guy? And it's just like, let the experts do their job, man. Like, they know more than you about medical science, one, but specifically about what's going on with Victor. And I guarantee you, they're not holding Victor out like on purpose or to be mean to the fans or to make the fans mad. Like, they want Vic to play too. And
I also go ahead.
Yeah, there's just there's no rhyme or reason in just sitting Victor. Like, they're not tanking. It's not like they're tanking.
This is the point I was going to make, is that I don't advocate for blindly trusting whatever an NBA team or a public official or anybody that journalists cover tell you. Like, I'm not saying that, always defer to the experts. We don't know. It's important to ask questions. The question I would ask here is, what is the upside? What kind of grand conspiracy do you think is being hidden here? Like, what would the Spurs motivation be? Think about this. What would the Spurs motivation be to not play Victor Wembanyama, their best player, in games that they want to win?
I mean, I can answer that.
Just think about what you're asking here.
I can answer that.
I'm not saying trust the Spurs at all costs and that they should never be questioned. But if you're going to come and demand or accuse an organization of hiding something, shouldn't you ask, like, why they'd be hiding it?
I know the answer to this question.
Okay.
Here's the conspiracy theory.
See, you subject yourself to the madness more than I do. I try to stay away from that stuff. So please explain that to me.
It's going because it will keep Victor from reaching 65 games, so he doesn't win awards. And so they don't have to pay him the supermax. But more than that, Victor's on board with it because it'll save money to pay other players and help him build a team down the road. That's the conspiracy theory.
Lord.
By the way, I need to say this. It's complete bunk. That's not true, everybody. Not true. But that is the conspiracy theory.
People don't believe that. I choose to believe those are bots.
I don't know. Have you met Americans?
I don't meet as many of them.
They believe somebody believes anything.
You're talking about accounts with a bunch of numbers at the end of their name online. I don't think they're real Americans.
I mean, that's
the
quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. That sounds like something he would believe.
Yeah,
maybe they don't.
But
they don't believe
even he understands salary cap well enough to know, like, what that's not. Look at the Oklahoma City Thunder, by the way. As off the top of my head, counter to this ridiculousness.
We don't really have to address this conspiracy theory. It's completely ridiculous.
They are set up to dominate the NBA for the next millennium. They just won the NBA title. They're on pace to have the best record in the history of the league. They've lost one game in the past 7 months. They have a chance to get the number 1 pick in next year's draft, by the way, because the Clippers are a disaster, and the Clippers gave them an unprotected pick that's about to turn out pretty dang well. And they maxed out their guys. They maxed out 3 guys, and things are fine. You should look forward to maxing out guys. That means you've done something well. The Spurs aren't going to try to not max out Victor Wembanyama. Victor Wembanyama's not going to try to not max himself out. That's absurd. I can't believe that people think that. I choose to believe that they don't.
I can't believe we just spent 5 minutes on that.
Well, to go back to my original point, there is no reason to think that the Spurs are hiding something here. That the Spurs are intentionally holding him out of games that he could otherwise play in.
I mean,
Because what is the upside?
It really goes without saying, but we said it anyway.
Yeah, okay.
But before we wrap up, people are gonna be mad if we don't talk about Giannis. Are we letting the listenership down if we don't address that at all?
I get you're right. That's good looking out. It's been a long week. Games all over the country. So much happening to the Spurs. The NBA Cup coming up. I'd forgotten about that we needed to address the Giannis. The Giannis has been since our last podcast. So yeah, so you brought it up. Go ahead, give us your take.
My take is they're not trading for Giannis.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
To expand a little bit, and I mean this in a complimentary way. I don't want to ruffle any feathers, but the Spurs are only going to trade with you if they can fleece you. So if they can get Giannis for nothing, sure. Kind of like how they got De'Aaron Fox last year without giving up anything that they really cared about. Sure. But they're not going to give up. If you start talking about Stephon Castle and especially Dylan Harper, I don't think they're interested. I think there's timeline issues with that. I think there's an idea that what is the point in giving up guys that are going to help you, 5 years from now to come in second place to Oklahoma City, like almost let that dynasty sort of start to fade a little bit before you start going up against it.
Yep. I wrote about this in the newspaper last week, and I mentioned some of the precise points that you just brought up, that the Spurs are trying to own the league from, let's say, 2028 onward, 2027 onward. They envision themselves as a franchise that when they move into that sparkling new arena across from the Alamodome in downtown San Antonio, that they are going to be in the middle of a new dynasty, created in large part by Victor Wembanyama, Stephon Castle, Dylan Harper. Maybe De'Aaron Fox is still around, but definitely those first three. And to skip steps is just something that this organization does not do. And granted, Giannis is a guy who makes it really tempting to skip steps. Can just the thought of him playing alongside Victor Wembanyama just makes you giddy. I mean, how delightful, how entertaining, how amazing would that be to see those two freaks of nature dominate NBA games and play in important NBA playoff series. But to give up what they think Stephon Castle or Dylan Harper would be for more of a short-term type of window. Giannis is on the back. He's probably, if not past his prime, the past his prime portion of his career is coming up soon. And so all the pressure would be to win now. All the pressure would be to win the next few years and maximize this Victor Giannis window while the Oklahoma City Thunder look invincible. I'm not sure that's the best allocation of resources. I mean, why not play for the longer window as opposed to the one when you have an all-time franchise at the peak of its powers in Oklahoma City? And then to add to that, well, you say you don't give up Dylan Harper or Stephon Castle. Well, then why do the Bucks do that? It's sort of taken as gospel that the Spurs can make as attractive of a pitch as any team in the league to the Bucks. But if you look closer, I'm not sure that's necessarily true, because a lot of the picks that the Spurs would be offering would be their own picks, would be the picks of a team with Victor Wembanyama and Giannis on it. So how attractive are those going to be? The Spurs do have a Hawks one, which is looking less and less attractive because the Hawks are actually being competently run now. There's one from the Mavericks in a few years, and I guess a Timberwolves possibility. But the package for Giannis would have to include, for the Bucks to be interested, Harper or Castle, and I just don't see the Spurs doing that for all the reasons that Jeff spelled out. And there are just other. I think other teams could could match the Spurs offer, if not exceed it. And if teams are matching and or exceeding, Spurs are not the type of franchise that's going to get in a bidding war for Giannis and overpay. So
Well,
that's the explanation.
The other point that's going to happen with Giannis, if it comes to that, is he's going to decide where he wants to play, or one or two places where he wants to play. It's not going to be a 30-team bidding war. It's much like with De'Aaron Fox, who identified, I want to come to San Antonio. You guys better figure out how much you can get out of that deal for me. That's what will happen with Giannis. And I don't know that he wants to come to San Antonio. I don't know one way or another.
Well, the devil's advocate there is that you don't have to trade a guy where he wants to go. The exhibit A there was Kawhi in Toronto. Like, Kawhi did not want to go to Toronto. And Spurs took the best
those are
deal
further.
get.
Yeah, those are further and farther between.
They are.
Because a team is if Giannis says, I'm not coming to play in name a team, Charlotte. I don't want to play in Charlotte. I'm never going to sign. You can trade me there, but they're going to have me for 3 months and I'm a free agent. Charlotte's not going to give you anything for that. So that's how it suppresses his value. And the Bucks will end up getting the best value out of the place where Giannis wants to go, but it will never be full value because he's already signaled that it's their bust. So it's just, but yeah, they're not going to trade for him. And people, like there's some maybe people that aren't in tune with, I don't know, they'll be like, you wouldn't trade Dylan Harper would be off the table for Giannis, you know, like you wouldn't. And no, I wouldn't. And it doesn't mean I think Dylan Harper is going to be a better player than Giannis or is going to be an MVP. I think Dylan Harper can be an all NBA player at some point, but you're not saying that Dylan Harper is going to be a generational freak. It's just a timeline thing. Would you rather have 10 years of Dylan Harper starting now and through his prime, or would you rather have 3 years of 30-something Giannis again going up against that OKC dynasty? And to me, you're almost kind of doing the best you can now, building what you got. Maybe playing that Oklahoma City dynasty with these young guys will make them tougher, make them better.
Yeah. And
then 3, 4, 5, some seasons down the road, maybe you can knock them off. And it's not going to last forever. Oklahoma City, I don't know how, but
it might.
I mean, it can, but these things always kind of play themselves out.
Well, I've repeated this a bunch on the podcast.
The one argument that's been made to me that I don't necessarily buy, but I can understand, is if you have Giannis and Wemby, maybe that changes how Oklahoma City has to play now. Maybe they're not getting to the paint. So now they become a jump shooting team. Maybe a lot of the things that make them what they are, they have to change. And maybe that's an argument for, if we had those two guys, maybe we could beat them now. I don't know that I necessarily buy it, and I'm risk averse, so I probably wouldn't do it. But if you wanted to make an argument about why Wemby and Giannis together might be what you need to do to make a dent in that Oklahoma City monster, I can see where you're coming from. But I'm on the other side of just, there's no sense in trading a bunch of good stuff to come in second.
I've repeated this a bunch on the podcast and the newspaper, but it's worth pointing out again. Like the Spurs aren't going to win this season. The entire course of NBA history for decades and decades and decades and decades shows you that teams don't go from missing the playoffs 6 years in a row to competing for a title. There are steps involved. And yes, you'd add an all-world MVP candidate in Giannis, but the best players in the history of the game have had to lose playoff series before they win it all. There are steps to be taken. And this is a roster, even though it has Harrison Barnes on it, and to a lesser degree, De'Aaron Fox, who's played in a grand total of 1 playoff series since his entire career. There's no playoff experience on this team.
Luke Kornet has a title.
Okay, there you go. Luke Kornet.
But your point is valid.
I'm sorry.
I
stand corrected. But you get my, like, the veterans, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, guys who've been around, Julian Champagny, Jeremy Sohan's getting to be sort of a veteran now. On down the line, these guys just haven't been through it, and none of them have been through it together. And so to put all your eggs in the basket of winning this year or winning next year, it's just not how this works. The centerpiece player who if you would look at all of the list of NBA champions going back through time and identify their best player, their centerpiece player, not necessarily the Finals MVP, but the guy. And I would count in the early Lakers years, that was Shaq as opposed to Kobe. I think Kobe became that. But the first guy that you find going back from 2025 on through the ages that won before, I think their year 7 in the league, was Tim Duncan in 1999. He won it in his third season. Everybody else, it takes the best guy won it in his 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th season. Steph Curry didn't win his first 5 years. LeBron James didn't. It just doesn't happen. On down the line, the last few years, Giannis, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jokic. It takes all these guys. You don't win in your first 5 years. It takes these guys time, and that's why you build things to last. I got one thing I was going to mention in the middle of your eloquent soliloquy there was I got a request yesterday from our good friend Maxime Aubin from L'Equipe, who's
Maxime.
San Antonian. He's been a San Antonian for the past couple of years, covering Victor. Does a great job. He was writing a story about the Giannis situation and wanted some perspective on Spurs trade history and whatnot. And one thing that I brought up to him that it sort of came up in our back and forth, and I'd forgotten this, but the last time that the Spurs had ever considered, I shouldn't say the last time, but one notable time that the Spurs had considered trading a young foundational piece for a superstar. And this was relevant to a writer from L'Equipe in France. Can you off the top of your head think of what I thought of?
Yeah,
it's going back a long time.
Tony for J Kidd.
Tony for Jason Kidd. And at that time, people in the webosphere, there was no social media, but on the
Telegraph
message boards, on the message boards, they were like, how could you not trade this spindly, little unaccomplished 20-something draft pick from France, who's never going to be anything? Why would you not trade him for a Hall of Famer? A point guard is exactly what the Spurs need. A Hall of Fame point guard is exactly what the Spurs need to compete. And if you look back on that and think how thankful the Spurs are that they didn't do that deal, that tells you a lot, I think. How things would have changed if the Spurs had traded Tony Parker for Jason Kidd. Would they only have? I don't think they'd have 5 championships. Anyway, I think
it's fair to say
and I'm not saying that Dylan Harper is going to turn into Tony Parker, or that Giannis is all of a sudden going to become a shell of himself like Jason Kidd eventually did in his later years. I guess Jason did win a title in Dallas, but not as the star. The point is that's the risk you take when you trade a guy like that, who you believe in. It's not that you should never trade a young player, but the Spurs believed in Tony at the time, just like the Spurs believe in both Stephon Castle and Dylan Harper now. And there needs to be serious consideration before you make the splashy, sexy move for the superstar.
Like the Spurs had zero interest in trading for the number 2 pick last summer. Like when teams came to them, no, we are not trading the number 2 pick. And that was before they ever saw Dylan Harper in a Spurs uniform. Like it's even a more attractive asset now. Like they're not trading that. They're not trading that.
Glad we solved all that. Look forward to talking to everyone again next week after the Spurs beat the Lakers and trade for Giannis, and we've proven to be wrong on everything.
Unwinnable.
Until next time, take care of each other and keep it real.